How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Gimel, Daf 33 of Masechta Zevachim. Friends. Okay. The first part of Daf 33 discusses partial entry of Tamei persons into the temple, a continuation of the discussion we began yesterday with the opinion of Ula, discussing if one sticks his hands into the azara, is that considered like that person stuck their entire body into the azara? We will discuss that. We will then discuss leaning and slaughtering immediately. Samuch lesmicha shchita, is that the oraisa? Is that the rabbanon? And finally, Tamei persons touching kodesh. What? I don't even remember what that talks about. Tamei persons touching machlokas of Yochanan v'Shlakish. Right. That's going to take us into tomorrow's daf. Friends, these are the topics we have ahead of us on Daf Lamed Gimel of Masechta Zevachim. Let us jump in. All right, friends, we are going to begin on Daf Lamed Gimel of Masechta Zevachim on the second line of the daf. Lema Misayele. Let's say that the following supports Ula. Who could remind us what Ula's opinion is? Ula's opinion is, let's actually just read it quickly from Daf Lamed Beis Amud Beis, about 5-10 lines into Lamed Beis Amud Beis. Amar Ula Amar Rish Lakish. So Ula quotes Rish Lakish, which is going to be important that it's Rish Lakish, allegedly. Tamei sheichnis yado lifnim. A Tamei person who sticks his hand into the azare, loke, gets hit. Shenemar, as opposed to says, b'chol kodesh lo siga, v'almitesh lo seitze, etc. Fine. So it says, Ula, somebody sticks his hand into the azare, he gets makis. Because bia b'miktsas shma bia, because partial entry is considered entry. Now, lema misayele, let's say that the following supports Ula. Kol asmichis sha'ayu sham kari alein ani teichev l'smicha shchita. That in general, we would say, when it comes to korbanis that require smicha, leaning with all of one's might on the head of the animal before it is slaughtered. So generally, we would apply the principle of teichev l'smicha shchita, that immediately after smicha is the shchita, i.e., it should all be in the azara, right, where it's going to be, right? So if we're talking about a korban asham, and you're going to do smicha on the korban asham, so you would go into the azara. Well, I guess that's also interesting because a Yisrael is only allowed to go into the Ezes Yisrael to begin with, which is interesting. But anyways, normally we would say that you would go into the Azara and do smicha there in the Azara, and then immediately after the smicha is done on the korban, it would be slaughtered in the Azara. Chutz mizo, with the exception being the asham of the mitzora, the asham of the mitzora. Shoyse b'shar nikinor. Shein mitzora yachol likanes l'sham ad shemazin olav midam chatoso midam hashamu. Again, back up like 2 lines. Chutz mizo, with the exception being the asham of a mitzora. Shoyse b'shar nikinor, which is in Shar Nikinor. We had discussed this yesterday. I have another slide here. A slide that I borrowed from Daf Chof. I copied and pasted this from Daf Chof of Masechta Zevachim. So here also you could see the Shar Nikinor. I actually don't have an arrow on this one for the Shar Nikinor, but it's at the bottom of the image where those half circle of steps are. That rainbow of steps, whatever. They're at the bottom there by the entrance. We discussed it yesterday. The entrance into the Azara, there you go through Shar Nikinor. Now, when it comes to the Mitzora, as we discussed yesterday, because he can't go into the Azara, So he is going to do his smicha not inside the Azara, but in Shar Nicanor, in sort of the width of the gate. Without going into the Azara, he would lean on his korban there, and then someone would take the korban into the Azara where they would slaughter it. So you wouldn't be able to do Teichav Smicha Shchita. The Mitzora wouldn't be able to go in to the Azara in order to do the Smicha. Rather, he would have to do it in Shar Nicanor, since he's Tamei. And then it would be brought into the Azara, and the Shchita would happen in the Azara. So you can't quite do the Teichef L'Smicha Shchita. You can't just do it immediately after the Smicha is going to be the Shchita, because the Mitzara can't actually do the Smicha, the leaning on the animal, in the Azara. He has to do it in Shar Nicanor, and then the animal is taken from Shar Nicanor into the Azara and slaughtered. So again, let's start from the beginning. So let's say that this supports Ula, who says Bia b'mikzas shma bia, and one can't even stick his hand. A Tamei person can't even stick his hand into Azar. Generally speaking, when it comes to smicha, so smicha would be done in the Azara, and immediately after the smicha would be the shchita. Chutz mizo, but not the Asham Mitzora. Shaisu b'Shar Nicanor. The smicha of the Asham Mitzora was in Shar Nicanor. Shei Mitzora yachal likanis l'sham, because a Mitzora is unable to go into the Azara. Until there's Rikas Adam of his Chatos, of his Asham, only then is he allowed into the Azara. But at the time of the Smicha of his Korban Asham, and I assume the Korban Chatos as well. I mean, I think Rashi Davka mentions the Asham Mitzora, but I think that there's a Smicha. I think there's Smicha by Korban Chatos as well. That could be, I'm wrong. I'm sure that we'll get a better grip on this the more we learn Kachim. But anyways, so because the Mitzora is unable to go into the Azara, he has to do his smicha in Shar Nicanor. And this is a support for Ula, because Ula says that you can't stick your hands into the Azara. Even sticking your hands is too much. But now, if he was wrong, and if actually you're allowed to stick your hands into the Azara, well then, why does the smicha have to be in Shar Nicanor? Right? If Ula is wrong, and if you are allowed to stick your hands into the Azara, and Bia Mikzas Lo Shmei Bia, and you're allowed to stick your hands into the Azara, so then why does the Mitzora have to do smicha in Shar Nicanor? Can't you just take the animal as far into the Azara as close, inside the Azara, as close to Shar Nicanor as possible. Let him stick his hands into the Azara and do smicha like that. So from the fact that we don't do that, and we bring and we have the animal with the Mitzora in Shar Nicanor, and it does smicha in Shar Nicanor before bringing it into the Azara, so that must be because he can't even stick his hands into the Azara. Bia b'mikzas shma bia, it's a support for Ula. Rav Yosef says of Yosef, not necessarily. How come? So here let's take a look at the diagram. Here let's take a look at the slide. As I said, I literally copied and pasted this slide from Daf Chaf because we're going to be referencing the same machlokas over there. If you see, I have in the Azara, I have 3 rectangles: a gold rectangle, a blue rectangle, and a green rectangle. That has to do with kodesh kochim, right? Kodesh kochim shchitasim batzafon. That when it comes to a chatos, an asham, an ola, they have to be slaughtered in the north of the Azara. And in this diagram, the north is to the right, the left, right up. If we look at this image, the top of the image is west. You see the key on the right. I also have there's a key on the image itself, and I have my own key there on the slide, right? The top of the image is west, the right is north, the bottom is east, the left is south. So now, the kodesh kochim have to be slaughtered in the north of the Azara. The question is where in the north of the Azara. The opinion of Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is by the gold rectangle, which is bein ha'ulam v'lamizbeach. That the korban can even be slaughtered in the north of the Azara, in the area between the ulam and the mizbeach, which is where the gold rectangle is. The opinion of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, is that it has to literally be al yerech ha-mizbeach tzafona, to the north of the mizbeach, where the blue rectangle is, directly to the north of the mizbeach. Then there's the opinion of Rebbe, which is the green rectangle, which is at the kachikachim, and an oshim is a kachikachim, can be slaughtered even where the green rectangle is, which is the 22 amis, half of which are the Ezras Yisrael, the first 11 amis of the Azara, where even Yisraels can go into, and I guess do smicha there. And then the next 11 amis is the Ezras Kohanim. And says, Rebbe, you can even slaughter Kachei Kachim in the north of the Azara, in that area of the Ezras Yisrael and Ezras Kohanim. So Rav Yosef, so what was our question? So we're saying, look, by Mitzorah, he does smicha in the Shar Nikanor because he can't go into the Azara. Now, we wanted to say that this is a support for Ula. Ula says he can't even stick his hands into Azara. And this is a support for Ula because if you could stick your hands into the Azara, then why didn't you just bring the Korban in the Azara right next to Shar Nikanor and let the Mitzorah stick his hands into the Azara? So the animal will be in the Azara, he'll be standing in Shar Nikanor, he'll just stick his hands into the Azara and do smicha there. But we don't say that. We say he has to do smicha in the Shar Nikanor, must be because he can't stick his hands into the Azara. Rav Yosef says, nah, not really. You know what? Maybe he can stick his hands into the Azara, but that's not going to help. Even if he could stick his hands into the Azara, it won't help. Why won't it help? Because we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the blue rectangle. Al yerech ha-mizbeach tzafona. The shchita of the asham is gonna have to be opposite the mizbeach, not like Rebbe says where the green rectangle is. And the green rectangle is where you, right, meaning if he's standing in Shar Nikanor and the animal is brought to him to Shar Nikanor and he sticks his hands into the Azara and does smicha on the animal in the Azara, it's going to be by the green triangle. It's going to be right at the beginning of the Azara. The thing is that we don't paskin like Rebbe. We paskin like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, which means that anyways, even if he sticks his hands into the Azara and he does smicha right there, the animal is going to have to be escorted then to where the blue triangle is, the blue rectangle. I had the same thing when we were learning Daf Chaf, that if I say triangle, I mean rectangle. Anyways, the animal is going to have to be led to where the blue rectangle is in order to slaughter it. So it's not a proof for Ula, because even if you would hold that you can stick your hands into Azara, it's not going to help you because you still wouldn't have Teichav the Smicha Shchita, since even after a Smicha, someone's going to have to escort the animal to the blue rectangle, Al Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafona, like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, in order to slaughter it there. So even if you can stick your hands into the Azara, it's not going to help in terms of Teichav the Smicha Shchita. Right, so Amar of Yosef says of Yosef, even if you could put your stick your hands into Azar, it's not going to help, because Amani Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, this Bryce says like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar who says Mirachak Sofin V'li'avid, that you have to go a distance in the north to opposite the Mizbeach where the blue rectangle is. Mirachak Sofin, right? They have to go further into the north in order to slaughter it, and you wouldn't be able to have Teichav Smicha Shchita anyways. V'li'avid Pish. In fact, the Gemara, but why not just make like a little door leading into the Azara right opposite the Mizbeach and let him do smicha from there, right? Like where the blue triangle is, where the blue rectangle is. What if you just made a little door into the Azara over there, and the Mitzvah could stand by that door and do smicha, right? Meaning, if you're saying that you're allowed to stick your hands into the Azara, that's not a problem. Just that it's not going to help here because you're going to have to escort it to where the blue rectangle is. Why not just have a door into the Azara opposite where the blue rectangle is? And then you can have the B'tzara stand there, stick his hands into Azara, do smicha there, and then just slaughter it immediately. So why not just do that if you were allowed to stick your hands into Azara? Well, because you can't. The pasuk says, "Hakol bichsav miyad Hashem ola yiskil kom lechas atabnis." That all of the blueprints for the Beis Hamikdash were divine from the Rabbeinu Shalom. We can't just be adding pishpishes in the Azar. Well, I'm hearing. What's the sound that I hear? Oh, I guess my parents are home and turned on the vent. I thought maybe it was a siren or something. Hopefully the people from Yemen will leave us alone now. Anyways, so we can't just be adding pishpishes into the Azara, so that also wouldn't work. Okay, fine. So we said that technically maybe you can stick your hands into the Azara, just that it's not going to help, since you're going to have to walk it anyways over to the blue rectangle. Those who say, Omar Rav Yosef says of Yosef, maybe you could say that Taked is like Rebbe. Maybe you could say it is like Rebbe, and technically you can slaughter the Korban Asham right at the beginning of the Azara. The thing is, Kol Asomech Rosh of Rubo Machnis, my time Kokocho Ba'inon, Hilkach Lo Efsher. The thing is, though, you can even say that it is like Rebbe. And yeah, maybe you can slaughter the Korban Asham right at the beginning of the Azara. The thing is, when you do smicha on a Korban, you have to put all your weight on the Korban. And in order to do that, you can't do smicha by just sticking your hands into the Azara. But if the animal's in the Azara and the Mitzvah is in Shar Nikanor, and he sticks his hands in, you can't do smicha that way. You have to put all your weight on it. You have to have Rosh Verubo, and you can't have Rosh Verubo in the Azara. So therefore, even if you say it is like Rebbe, still, the smicha of the Mitzvah is going to have to be in Shar Nikanor, where he can do a proper smicha. Okay, and now we get to the next part of the daf, lean and slaughter immediately, right? Tekef l'smicha shchita. We're going to learn a bit more about tekef l'smicha shchita. Maikasover. What does the author of this briser hold in terms of tekef l'smicha shchita, the requirement to immediately slaughter after smicha? Ikasover smichas osham mitzor de oraise. If he holds that the requirement for a mitzora to do smicha on the korban oshim is the oraisa. So if he holds that the smicha of a mitzora by his korban oshim is mida oraisa, v'techef l'smicha shchita de oraisa, and also the requirement to immediately do shchita after smicha is the oraisa, well, leo v'lismach lehedja d'achmana omar. Well, if the Tana of the Brisa holds that the Mitzorah doing smicha on this Korban Ashim is mida oraisa, he's got to do it mida oraisa, and the concept of immediately slaughtering after smicha is mida oraisa, well, then the Torah is saying that a Mitzorah needs to do smicha, and that smicha needs to be immediately before shechita. Let him go. The Torah is saying, let him go into the Azara, do smicha on his korban, so that they could slaughter it immediately. All these things are the oraisa. Masna says technically you're right, but we're concerned that he's going to venture one step too many into the Azara, and then he'll be b'ba'aya, he'll have problems because he's walking he's in the Azara more than he needs to be, and he's playing with the chiyuv kares over there. So therefore, we don't want to mess with that. Those who say, smichas osham mitzora de oraisa, v'techav smicha l'shchita lab de oraisa. Those who say, that says Ravada bar Masna, that while the smicha of a mitzora on the korban osham is the oraisa, that it's the oraisa that the mitzora has to do smicha on his korban osham. However, the concept of techav l'smicha shchita is lab de oraisa. The concept of having to do smicha in the azaris that it could immediately be slaughtered is not doraisa. And therefore, So the Mitzorah has to do smicha and his korban asham, but teichav smicha shchita is not d'oraisa, and therefore he can do the smicha in the Shar Nikanor, even though it's not going to be immediately before the shchita. Meisve, but we have a contradiction, v'somach v'shachad, as we saw yesterday. We have the juxtaposition of the two psukim of smicha and shchita. Right, the first pasuk says v'somach yoda avashol v'nisol l'chaber immediately followed by v'shachad has been abakar lifnei Hashem. Right, so it says lifnei Hashem. We say that lifnei Hashem applies both to smicha and shchita, and lifnei Hashem is in the azara. So v'somach v'shachad mas smicha b'torah and av shchita b'torah. So we say that lifnei Hashem is both by smicha and shchita, and just like the smicha, you have to be tahor, because if it's lifnei Hashem, if it's in the azara, you have to be tahor in order to go into the azara. So the shchita is also lifnei Hashem, so you have to be tahor in order to do the shchita lifnei Hashem in the azara. But v'i amart lav d'oraisa. But if we're going to say, wait a second, teichav l'smicha shchita is not d'oraisa, you don't have to be in the azara to do smicha. Well, then we're basically saying that this whole concept of needing to be in the azara is irrelevant. And if the whole concept of needing to be in the azara is irrelevant, well, then you shouldn't have to be tahor either. Then you should even be able to be tamei for shchita, for smicha. So ela ipuch. No, so rather, don't say that smicha of mitzorah and his korban asham is d'oraisa, but that smicha, teichav the smicha shchita is d'rabanan. No. Rather, or is not d'oraisa, but rather, ela ipuch smicha as asham mitzorah lav d'oraisa. No, the requirement for a mitzorah to do smicha and his korban asham is not d'oraisa. However, teichav the smicha shchita d'oraisa. But when you have to do smicha, teichav the smicha shchita is d'oraisa, just that the smicha of a mitzorah on his korban asham is not d'oraisa, and that's why it can be in Shar Nikanor, even though you won't have teichav the smicha shchita, but the smicha of a mitzorah and his korban asham anyways is not mida oraisa. Ravina Amar Linyan Malkus Itmar. Okay, thanks Ravina. Ravina has a very interesting shita, which is that, I mean, honestly, I don't even think it's that interesting to the extent that, like, I think I was kind of feeling this the whole kind of time, and maybe some of the Chevra was also feeling this, which is, Ula had quoted Rish Lakish as saying that, what did he say? He said, Tamei sheichnis yadu lifnim loke, that a Tamei person who sticks his hand into the azara gets malchus. A Tamei person sticks his hand into the azara gets malchus. Okay, and therefore bia b'mixas shmei bia, and then all of a sudden we're asking a question. If you remember from yesterday, we asked the question of mitzorah on day 8. And it's also Erev Pesach, but then he also becomes a Baal Keri. And then he goes to the mikveh, now he's a Tvul Yom. And we're talking about a Chiyuv Kares. If he sticks his hand in, he should be Chayiv Kares. But the thing is, Ravina points out, that maybe you were wondering this too, is Ula never said anything about Kares. He said Makis, not Kares. Ula said if you stick your hand into Azar as a Tamei person, you Chayiv Makis. All of a sudden we're saying that, Korban Pesach, you Chayiv Kares for, but also Tvul Yom, sticking his hand into the Azara, according to Ula, you Chayiv Kares. And then we said, well, since it's allowed for Mitzorah, it's also allowed for Tvul Yom. Says Ravina, Omar Lenin Malchus Itmar. All Ula said is you Chayiv Malchus, nobody said anything about being Chayiv Kares. And now we get up to the final section of today's Daf, Tamei persons touching kodesh. And this is a sugya that we are going to continue into tomorrow's daf. Okay. Okay, so now comes Ravin. He says the name of Babble, that actually, this whole thing with Bia b'mixas shmabia and Ula Shita, comes Ravin and he says this is not correct. If we go back again to Ula, from yesterday, Amar Ula, Amar Shlakish, Tamei sheichnis yadu lifnim lokesh nema b'chol kodesh l'siga, that a Tamei person sticks his hand into the azara he's chayiv makis. What's his proof? Right? It's Ula's quoting Rish Lakish. A Tamei person stands Azar. What's his proof? The pasuk of b'chol kodesh lo siga. Comes Rav and says, one second. Rish Lakish learns other things from that pasuk. According to Rish Lakish, b'chol kodesh lo siga is not teaching that a Tamei sheichnis yado lifnim is chayiv makis. It's not. Rish Lakish teaches that b'chol kodesh lo siga is talking about something else. He's talking about literally b'chol kodesh lo siga. A Tamei person cannot touch kodshim. If a Tamei person touches kodshim, it's chayiv makis. That's what it's talking about. It's not talking about a Tamei sheichnis yado lifnim person or bia b'miksa shma bia. No, if b'chol kodesh lo siga. If a Tamei person touches kodshim, they're going to be chayiv makis. Don't touch kodshim, otherwise you chayiv makis. This, again, as I mentioned yesterday, this pasuk is by a yoledes. A yoledes, for a boy, for example, she's Tamei for 7 days, and she goes to the mikvah, and then for the next 33 days, she's a tvulas yom aruch. She's basically a tvulas yom until the end of those 33 days, and then on day 34, or technically 33 plus the first 7 days is 40, so then day 41, she then brings korbanos. Anyways, so it says, b'chol kodesh lo siga, during this time period when she's a tvulas yom aruch, she can't, b'chol kodesh lo siga, don't touch any kodshim, v'el mikdash lo savo, and don't go to the Beis HaMikdash. So now, Kiyasa Ravin, when Ravin came, Amr Babbo says in the name of Babbo, le'inyan Tamei shenoga b'kodesh idmar, that pasuk of b'chol kodesh lo siga literally means a Tamei person can't touch kodshim. Didmar, that it was stated Tamei shenoga b'kodesh, a Tamei person who touches kodshim, touches kodesh. Rish Lakish amaloke. Rish Lakish says chayiv makis. Rabbi Yochanan Amar eino loke. Rabbi Yochanan says not chayiv makis. Rish Lakish Amar loke. Rish Lakish says chayiv makis. B'chol kodesh lo siga. After all, the pasuk says b'chol kodesh lo siga. This tefillas yom aruch, she can't touch any kodesh, and if you do, well, it says don't. That's a lav. If you violate a lav, you chayiv makis. Rabbi Yochanan Amar eino loke hu b'truma ksiv. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, that's talking about truma, because it says ad milos yimei tahara. It says b'chol kodesh lo siga, you can't touch any kodesh ad milos yimei tahara, until the days of her purification are up. But once they're up, she can touch it. Now, once they're up, meaning she's a tefillas yom aruch, right? After 7 days for a boy, let's say, after 7 days she goes to the mikvah. For the next 30 days, she's considered tefillas yom ad milos yimei tahara until the end of those 30 days. The end of the 30 days, b'chol kodesh lo siga doesn't apply anymore. She's no longer a tefillas yom, and she cannot touch kodesh. What kodesh can a tvul yom touch comes nightfall? Truma. Kodshim, you have to wait till the next day. She's still mechusayis kippurim till the next day. So this pasuk is not talking about kodshim. It's not talking about kodesh. It's talking about truma. So if a Tamei person touches kodesh, Rish Lakish says, well, the pasuk is saying chayiv makis. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the pasuk is talking about truma. Rish Lakish haikra lachi udasa. Now we ask another question. 1 second. Rish Lakish is learning from this pasuk that a Tamei person who touches kodesh is chayiv makis. Hi mi ba'ilei. Azhara le'ochel b'sar kodesh. It's the warning for somebody who eats b'sar kodesh. The pasuk says by a Tamei person who eats kodshim. I'm reading the pasuk. V'anefesh asher tochal basar mizevach hashlam v'ashel Hashem v'tumasu olav v'nichrusa hanefesh mimemel. That a Tamei person who eats kodesh is chayiv karis. Okay, that's the punishment. It's chayiv karis. Where's the warning? The warning comes from here. Ditmar azhara le'ochel basar kodesh minayin. How do we know? Where's the warning for a Tamei person who eats kodshim, who eats kodesh? Right? The pasuk says it's chayiv karis. Where's the warning? Right? We know, of course, whenever there's a punishment, there needs to also be a warning for it. Rish Lakish amar b'chol kodesh lo siga. Says Rish Lakish, it's learned out from the pasuk of b'chol kodesh lo siga. We're going to learn it out exactly how he learns it out from that pasuk. We're going to explain how exactly he learns it out from that pasuk. But says Rish Lakish, from the pasuk of B'chol kodesh lo siga, that's the warning for eating kachim in a state of tumah, and that you'll be chayiv kares for that. Rabbi Yechanan says, Rabbi Yechanan, Tani Bardila, that Bardila taught, Ase tumaso, that mibias mikdash. That it also, right, the pasuk that we just read by Ochel Kodesh, what Tamei Ochel Kodesh, what do we? I'll read the pasuk again. But nefesh asher tocha pasuk mizevach Hashem asher Hashem v'tum aso. Allah v'nichus nefesh ha'um yamel. And it says by bias hamikdash, it says kol nogeh b'meis b'nefesh ha'adam asher yomaz v'lo yischata as mishkan Hashem timei. If you have a person who's timei meis, and he goes into the Beis Hamikdash, v'nichus ha'nefesh ha'um yiso is chayiv kares kimenida lo zorak olav tamei otum aso bo. It says chayiv kares by bias mikdash, and it says tum aso there as well. So it says so a tamei shachol sakodesh is chayiv kares, and also a tamei shenichnas hamikdash is chayiv kares. So malahalan, just like bias mikdash, onosh v'hizir, there's a kares and a warning as well for that. So Afghan onosh v'hizir, so you are warned as well for eating kodesh. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan zef from that gezer shav. New. So this so there's a lot that we are associating Rish Lakish with regard to this pasuk of B'chol kodesh lo siga. Ula wanted to say B'chol kodesh lo siga teaches about Tamei shichnis yadav bifnim. Bias mikdash shmabia. Anyway, he went to learn from B'chol kodesh lo siga. Comes Rav and says, no way, no how. That pasuk B'chol kodesh lo siga is teaching that a Tamei person is not allowed to touch kodesh, and if he does, it's chayiv makis. But then we said, 1 second, but I thought B'chol kodesh lo siga is needed to teach the warning for Tamei she'ochel es hakodesh that is chayiv kares. So answers the Gemara, Tamei shenoga b'kodesh. Yes, the pasuk of B'chol kodesh lo siga is the warning for ochel kodesh. The thing is, it doesn't say B'chol kodesh lo ochel or whatever. It says B'chol kodesh lo siga. Like, why are they talking about touching if really it's talking about eating? So clearly, it is going to teach us something about touching. It's teaching that a tamei person who touches kodesh is chayiv makis. And the azhara, the fact that it's also a warning against eating kodesh, and if you do your chayiv kares, this is the warning. Well, because it says B'chol kodesh lo siga ve'la mikdash lo savo, continues the pasuk. So just like bias hamikdash is something that your chayiv kares for, so when it says B'chol kodesh lo siga, we're talking about something by kodesh that your chayiv kares for. Touching kodesh is not your chayiv kares. We said your chayiv makis, but you're not chayiv kares. What's something that your chayiv kares for with regard to kodesh? Eating it. So from the fact that it's juxtaposed ve'la mikdash lo savo, means that the B'chol kodesh lo siga is not talking about just touching, it's talking about something chayiv kares for, which is eating, i.e. it's the warning against eating kodesh in a state of tumah. And if you do, you will be chayiv kares. So therefore, Rish Lakish is able to learn out from B'chol kodesh lo siga both the chayiv makis for touching kodesh in a state of tumah, as well as the warning for being chayiv kares if one eats kodesh in a state of tumah. Tanya Kavasu the Rish Lakish, we have a brisa supporting Rish Lakish. B'chol kodesh lo siga, that when the pasuk says B'chol kodesh lo siga, don't touch any kodesh, azhara lo ochel, it is the warning for somebody who eats kodesh in the state of tumah, that the other pasuk that said is chayiv kares, this is the warning for that. Ata omer azhara lo ochel enu ela nogea. Wait, you're saying it's the warning for eating? Maybe it's just talking about touching. Tamlom b'chol kodesh lo siga ve'la mikdash lo savo. Yes, but it doesn't just say B'chol kodesh lo siga, it also says Ela mikdash lo savo. Makish kodesh lo mikdash, we're comparing kodesh to bias hamikdash. Ma mikdash davishesh b'karis netilas neshama, just like somebody who got a tamei person going into the bias hamikdash, there's netilas neshama, there's a chiyuv kares of kodesh davishesh netilas neshama. So also when we're talking about B'chol kodesh lo siga, we're talking about something that is a chiyuv kares, i.e. eating it. V'ibn ogea netilas neshama b'ika. Right? If we're talking about simply touching it, touching is not something that you chayiv kares for. Rather, what's something that you chayiv kares for? Eating kodesh, and it is the warning. Right? We had said in a different pasuk, if somebody eats kodesh, it's chayiv kares. This is the warning for that. That was Daf Lamed Gimel, Daf 33 of Masechta Zevachim. On Daf Lamed Gimel Masechta Zevachim, we learned about partial entry of Tamei persons in the temple. We continued that discussion. We wanted to bring a raya from the fact that a raya for Ula, who says that Bias Mikzas Shema Bia, from the fact that the Mitzora does the smicha of his Korban Asham in the Shar Nikanor, because he doesn't want to put his hands into the Azara. So we see that you don't want to even be of this Mikzas Shema Bia, to which we said, not necessarily, because you could say either that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that even if he would do smicha by sticking his hands into the azara, still it wouldn't be teichef the smicha shchita, because you'd have to bring the animal anyways to slaughter it al yerech hamizbeach tzafona. Alternatively, when you do smicha, you have to put all your weight on the animal, and that's going to require most of your body to be in the azara, and even if you say bias b'mikzas shma lo shma bia, but putting most of your body into the azara, that would be a problem. We also saw the opinion of Ravina, who had explained that clarified, I guess, that when Ula says that you're chayiv makis for partially going into the azara, it's only a chiyuv makis, it's not a chiyuv kares, as we assumed yesterday with the whole question with the mitzora and the tivul yom, and how's he going to stick his hands for the bohonis and be chiyuv kares. Says Ravina, all Ula had said in the name of Rish Lakish was that there's a chiyuv makis, not a chiyuv kares. We had discussed tekef the smicha shchita, right? We were wondering by the mitzora, is there a chiyuv de oraisa of the mitzora doing smicha on his korban asham? Also, there's a question of it bichlal, is the concept of teich of the smicha shchita de oraisa or not? So one answer we gave is yes. The mitzora is chayav mida oraisa to do smicha on his korban asham, and also take it the smicha shchita is also the oraisa. The reason why he does smicha nonetheless in Shar Nikanor is because we're concerned that even if he is allowed to go into Azara to do his smicha, what if he takes one extra step? It'll be chayiv kares. We gave a different answer, which is that actually the smicha of a mitzora and his korban ashram is not the oraisa. But in general, teikef the smicha shchita is the oraisa. And then we saw that Ravin actually disagreed with the concept of the pasuk of b'chol kodesh lo siga being used to say that Tamei shenichnas yado lifnim, right? Bia b'mitzvah shema bia, like Ula was alleging was the opinion of Rish Lakish. Comes Ravin and says, actually, essentially, Rish Lakish turns out from that pasuk that one who touches kodesh is chayiv makis. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees and says not chayiv makis. And Rish Lakish had also learned out from that pasuk that it is also the warning for one who eats, a Tamei person who eats kodesh, that will be chayiv kares. That was Daf Lamed Gimel, Daf 33 of Masechta Zevachim. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.